Go for it.
Hello all, and welcome to the May installment of the Cactus Poetry Open Mic, and we're really pleased to see you. And as I was mentioning before we started recording, we'll be doing these in June and July, then taking a break in August, and then starting up again in September. So anyway, we have two very exciting poets with us, Alice Pettway and Lawrence Welsh, and I will be introducing them in a second. I think someone's unmuted.
Yeah, I'll be muting people. Just go ahead.
I'm hearing an echo. So, okay, so there's a lot of sort of anniversaries, commemorations, and so forth this week, it seems like, and certainly the very sad anniversary of George Floyd's murder is perhaps at the top of that. I wanted to start with reading a short poem by Toi Dericotte, which is called "Why I Don't Write About George Floyd." Because there is too much to say, because I have nothing to say, because I don't know what to say, because everything has been said, because it hurts too much to say. What can I say? What can I say? Something is stuck in my throat. Something is stuck like an apple. Something is stuck like a knife. Something is stuffed like a foot. Something is stuffed like a body. And we also have I suppose it's only fitting that we have a total eclipse of the moon tonight on that anniversary. But I wanted to read one more poem and it's by Walt Whitman, whose birthday it is next week. When I heard the learned astronomer, when the proofs, the figures were arranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and diagrams to add, divide, and measure them, when I, sitting, heard the astronomer where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room, how soon unaccountable I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out, I wandered off by myself in the mystical moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars. Okay. So our first reader tonight is Alice Pettway, who's joining us from the Seattle area. And she's the author of 3 books from the distinguished Irish publisher Salmon Press, The Time of Hunger, 2017, Moth, 2019, and Station Lights, 2021. She also published a chapbook, Barbed Wire and Bedclothes, with Spire Press in 2009. Her poems have appeared in Agni, Rattle, River Styx, the Southern Review, the Three Penny Review, and many others. And she's really been not only a world traveler, but a world liver. She's grew up in rural Texas, served in the Peace Corps in Mozambique. She's lived very recently in Shanghai, China. Before that, Bogota, Colombia. She's lived in Europe, other places, and also did some very interesting things, like she was a resident artist in a national park in Alaska, and also a Lily Peter Fellow, winner of the Raymond L. Barnes Poetry Award. And we're very much looking forward to hearing Alice Pettway.
Thanks so much, John, and you too, Jules. It's really great to be here, and I'm so appreciative of folks like you who have made poetry venues available to everyone. And I don't know that there's any bright spot in this pandemic, but if it is, it's things like this where people have figured out ways to come together even when it was hard. So thank you both, and lovely to be joining you, Lawrence, as well. So let's read some poems. I actually just got my author copies finally yesterday, so I'm really excited to hold this in my hand. I've been reading off of PDFs everyone knows publication schedules have been a little bit wonky this spring, but it's out and I'm happy. So I think I'll start with the first poem, which is titled Shanghai. This morning, you mistook the teapot for a shoe. Understandable in this city where transubstantiation is no more divine than wash water tossed on the street. I conduct tests to determine our evolving composition. We float more easily than when we arrived at the seaside. We are becoming smog, dumpling steam, phlegm in an old man's throat. Who knows where it may lead? Maybe one morning I will be the shoe and you the teapot. Our neighbors will carry us home finally. I would like that. You on the stove, me by the door, each of us sure of purpose and place. So a lot of the poems in Station Lights came to be while I was living in Shanghai, but this next one is a holdover from Colombia. And, like so many things when you're in a new culture, you don't necessarily know, you hear stories and you don't know how widespread those practices are, if you're even interpreting them properly as a foreigner. So I feel like when I write about parts of the cultures I've lived in, it's always through the kind of kaleidoscope of my experience. But a friend talked to me about burial customs in Colombia and told me that, at least in her experience, that often after a couple of years, families would need to dig up the bones of their loved ones and store them somewhere else, not in the actual cemetery. And it got me thinking about that, but well, I'll just read you the poem. Death Custom. There's too much land here, enough to store every last rotting bit as long as we like. In closer country, measures are taken, bones dug up after a few years, an emptying as natural as a weekend morning when the jam no longer fits on the shelf in the refrigerator. When you pull each tub out of its corner and pop the lid, examine the damage. The chill slows things down, but nothing stops the mold. Best to toss the whole mess in the trash, but even then the spores get away from you, drifting along the hallway, demanding attention after the forgetting. They know they were worthy once of preservation. What is a grave if not a cabinet for the things we have let wait too long? This one takes us back to Shanghai. One of my favorite experiences about living in Asia, and this is not specific to China, but is the ever presence of bathhouses around, just even in the rural areas. We camped for a while in rural Japan, and even the smallest campground has a little bathhouse attached to it. And I have found myself sorely missing that since returning to the States, to be honest. This poem is titled Bathhouse. I am hungry for the curve of a stomach, for stubble, a ripple of fat. And even though I know I am not supposed to, I memorize the thighs beside me, the press of muscle and flesh under the water. The women of my childhood were draped like furniture for a long absence, their shapes mysterious and ripe for speculation. Next to me, a woman bathes, running her hand between the folds of her skin as comfortably as my mother ran her hands over a soapy plate. Maybe when I return home from this place where we are allowed to know each other, I will walk naked among the houses, calling out to the girls who live there and may never see any breast but their own unless they run into the street to witness mine. This is, I think John mentioned, I grew up in very rural Texas, a small town, under 500 people, and living in, Bogota is a big city, Shanghai is a much bigger city. And I think I was in these mega cities for a number of years, and something started to happen where I felt a little closing down of myself. And I think this poem, I realize now in hindsight, probably came out of that feeling, because it's released a little bit, luckily, here where I have a little more access to nature. This poem is called Defense Mechanism. In the cold months, my hands reach for warmth. One sweater at first, then another. A coat found on a bench. Wool knitted on small needles. Quills bristling from rayon. The slow build of soot on an unkempt chimney. The thaw comes later each year, and the zippers are more stubborn. Last August, I bathed in my own heat until an old woman in the metro yanked at my sleeve. Coward, she said, and I was ashamed, but also frightened, and could not bring myself to strip down there in the lights and the rush of an incoming train. This one's titled Detachment. And while I have been to Mexico, this doesn't grow out of any personal experience, but I read a really fascinating article about a man who had gotten up to some business in Mexico, and it inspired this. It's not particularly true to life, I don't think, but detachment. A man in Mexico built an island out of plastic bottles, stitched it together with mangrove roots, and took to the sea. I've seen the seams come out of things. Last night at dinner, I collected a friend's words in my soup bowl, but could not eat them, even with bread. In the metro, I touch strangers' hair, pluck a strand as the doors open. If someone would punch me, I could go home. A storm ricocheted bottles along the coast. The man washed up somewhere, slept for a few days, went back to gathering plastic. In the alley outside my building, the rain comes every afternoon. I'm just going to read a couple more because I think we're trying to stick to 20 minutes apiece. I mentioned the sort of the density of the urban environment of Shanghai and Bogota, and parts of that were hard for me, but parts of it I really loved because you experience these little bits and pieces of other people's lives just constantly, and that could be a little overwhelming sometimes, but also very rich because you got to touch the experiences of so many different people. We were in a high-rise apartment building, and I told my Mandarin teacher actually that the population of my hometown was less than 2 floors of my building, the number of people on 2 floors of my building. And she was horrified. She said, "Oh, how do you get food? Where do you go to the doctor? What is the..." But this poem came out of one of those little touches to somebody else's life. To the man who practices an old keyboard 2 floors up. Let's pretend electricity doesn't come into it, that the only current driving your notes is the rush of impulse across synapse, down the dark tunnels of your fingers onto the white expanse of key, moth skittering across frozen pane. That the imagined tilt of hammer and a string is the buzz of wings catching themselves against air. The arpeggio you practiced Thursday unwound 1 beat at a time, like the socks the downstairs neighbor hangs on his line, but wetter, drops falling faster and fatter until I peered out at the city from behind a waterfall of sound, the weight of it vibrating the concrete around me. I listen for your mistakes, collect them. I kept the 6th you wedged into the coda this morning, ugly and comforting. Okay, last two. This one is titled White Noise. I ordered silence online from the makers of that robot vacuum, the one that terrifies cats. They claim it will ricochet through my life, siphoning the mewling of the computer in its dark cubby, the shiver of leaves, even the snap of fish beaks against coral, the air conditioner accelerating endlessly around its distant track. I asked customer support if there was an attachment to suck the cacophony out of my head. For this, I said, I would pay extra, whatever they asked, really. No response came. I lay on the rug. The machine ran along my legs, the side of my face. I imagined as loudly as possible, waiting for the indicator light to switch on, for the whir and pinch of suction. The room is quiet now. Even the stuffing in the couch does not exhale beneath my weight. This last one, subtraction, is this is actually a theme I'm kind of exploring. I'm going to Art OMI here in a few months for a writing residency there, and plan to kind of take the, I don't know, I guess the emotion, the experience behind this poem, and hopefully build it out into a full manuscript. It's a topic I've really been stewing on. I've been away from home for so long, or maybe the better way to say that is I've had so many homes for so long that there's this loss of kind of a single identity, loss of memory, a fracturing of what we sort of consider our story. We all kind of have a narrative, and I find that it disintegrates a little bit more each year that I'm on the road more than I'm in one place. And this poem is kind of a kernel of that, and I'm hoping it will bear fruit into a broader creative endeavor. Subtraction. 5 apples. A stranger takes one. There are 4. I eat them. Or maybe the freeze comes late after the buds, and the branches hang heavy and bare as my hand, reaching for the coffee, I forget I have given up. Wine still in its bottle. A mind beating blankly against its shell. Bare as the road that ends at my hometown, the accent that has finally released my tongues and lips into vagrancy. I have 3 memories. Time takes 2. There is 1, but it isn't worth keeping. I forget. Then there is a white space where I am meant to write an answer. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Alice. That was marvelous, and there's a wonderful precision to your poems, and that the notion of ordering silence from the internet. I just love that. Could we unmute for a second and just unmute for a second and give a round of applause?
Thank you so much, everyone. Really good to be here.
Wonderfully done.
Great, thanks, Alice.
Thank you, Alice. So the new book is Station Lights. So pick up a copy. I think there's info in the chat that Jules has posted. Okay, so we're gonna mute everybody again and move on to our next.
Hold on.
Okay.
Lawrence, make sure you're unmuted too. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
that would help. So our next reader, Lawrence Welsh, I'm still hearing echo.
I'm trying to find it on, okay.
Okay, I'll start. That sounds better, I think. Our next reader, Lawrence Welsh, is a first-generation Irish American who in 2011 was named one of the top 100 Irish Americans of the year by Irish America magazine. So we have, with Alice and Salmon Press, we have this Irish thing going tonight. And I actually first met, I'm still hearing a lot of echoing. I'll just keep going. So I first met Lawrence up in Santa Fe several years ago when Bill Nevins had organized an Irish poetry reading up there, and several of us read. And then met again 6 years ago. There was a wonderful symposium that Bruce Holzapfel, who is here, organized in Placitas on the history of New Mexican and actually the history of Southwestern poetry. So, but Lawrence is down in El Paso, which is just a little too far for us to hang out together too often, but hopefully we will see each other in person fairly soon. Lawrence grew up in South Central Los Angeles, put himself through El Camino College and California State University, Long Beach, by working for 10 years as a supermarket grocery clerk at Safeway. In the meantime, he served as a journalist for 2 college newspapers, then worked as a reporter for the Pulitzer-Prize winning Daily Breeze newspaper in LA County, all the while fronting a punk band. And after 34 years in LA, Lawrence left Southern California for graduate school in Texas, received his MFA with honors in creative writing from the University of Texas at El Paso, where he currently resides. Lawrence has published 12 books of poetry, including Begging for Vultures, New and Selected Poems from the University of New Mexico Press, which is now in its second printing. Won the New Mexico Arizona Book Award and was a finalist for both the Penn Southwest Book Award and the Writers League of Texas Book Award. In 2015, Lummox Press published his collaboration with Santa Fe poet John Macker, Blood in the Mix. And in 2018, a remarkable book, Cutting the Wire, Photographs and Poetry from the U.S. Mexico Border, which was a collaboration with Ray Gonzalez and Bruce Berman, and it was named a Southwest Book of the Year award. Very much looking forward to seeing our Southern neighbor, Lawrence Welsh.
Thanks, John. And I want to thank John and Jules for inviting me here today. Albuquerque is a special place to me. New Mexico is an incredible place to me. And I want to congratulate Alice on her new book with Salmon in Ireland. And thanks for that great reading, Alice. So I'm just going to read some poems that I've never read live before tonight. And let's do it. Okay, the first poem is San Francisco de Assisi, Rancho de Taos, New Mexico. Angel of the blood on adobe, these skulls painted, created on a beggar's stretch, belong crucified, or against some grain belonging only here as we watch the disappearing Christ into blackness with a cross in the hidden golden back room. And crucified gold is Rome or spun vestment for pigmentation. It's driven, it's owned, it's repeating for a retooling, regrading as they bring it on to our home of universals. It starts with a match and an opening page. Thunderbird at 2 p.m. Windows become prisms for blood red pursuits that fade, twist around, disappear and appear again to say, only illusion and hallucination, only the death sound of burning sage, mesquite, and one flaming yucca will own, will retrieve a mourning ground for image, like the crack of ice cold beers, the moniker of serve cold over ice and then freeze it, still it until it melts again, flies off and becomes our minds, our lives, our earned and lost pedigrees. Two Owl Ridge. 1. Wooden at home. Portraiture lasted for real deal rock and stone in Los Matracas, Good Fridays. They sing one tune. Benevolence row or silent creep to crawl back and stop by the edge. 2. Yellowed mistakes drop in gyre's leopard purse or puma's paws for Franklin's repose. Call to call, Epiphany's game is street side laden, a coincidence of angel and Delray dust with green smoke in haggard lungs. 3. Treat respect for elders, Rush. They recede to the back ways, no penitence for press, no online razzle dazzle, no pumping the one. 2. Will hook up in goddess plates, a foundry here plated in bronze, the one flap, a permanent flight. Blood of the Crucifix, Taos, New Mexico. Pigmentation runs the piercing now for a giver on the rancho, who believes or doesn't, but sees first the splashes to flesh, almost bone from the skull down. Only wood believes a stabbing will do to hold whomever in placed. Old Christ, perhaps, is now lanced for the start of anonymity, the talk of oil and wine for the pouring and then a dripping away. Crosses of the Calvary, the Llano. Within crosses, crucifixes, the broken ones now in storm cloud reverie, or Calvario's pitch, long gone or at least vacated. Our hands are wood, slightly charred or snapped off east of Socorro, west of Raton. We find the darkness again and stumble too. Homemade is earth's desire, the pinion abandoned in rusted nails and old 2x4s when the vision goes and appears. One circling blue light of a stone, the butterfly lodge of no cross, then the steam, a million miniature crucifixes, all eyes believe. I'm gonna read a poem, moving in a little direction, different direction here. Here's a poem about Houston, Texas. After White Freightliner Blues. Only Houston for the pit, we become. Only Houston for the bayou, we become. Only Houston for the masquerade, for the ice house, for the devil's claw, for the hitchhikers in, for out, for belief in the push, belief in the touch of the swamp, of Southern to give and given again to only Houston, Only Houston, we become what's rolling and what's rolling again. Kenworth downshifter. Kenworth downshifter. Grilled to shine, all slits, shiny now, once became Sierra Blanca, or notes that way to El Capitan. For Van Horn, one wonders about the rumble. Bless the drivers for Terlingua, Alpine, and Marathon miles. He says, she says, now we're simply barreling through. Imaginary blood ocean. On the backdrop, one remembers the rights off the jetty and lefts. On the other side, for true surfers, can own themselves or a way to become one with the water, or knives, or pistols, or angel dust, or malt liquor. They take it, and take on another's wish of some peace, but never inland. Some remember or complain about Inglewood, Hawthorne, Lenox, Inglewood, being not close enough, not becoming the source, not really the real things, but a way that paints the directions that offer the real thing in, or another way home, another way back to say, I will leave one day, but let the salt and let the reddened breaks become my mind and a complete energy to learn and memorize for those other lives now gone from the ocean's floor. A short history for Frank O'Connor. To know my mother is to know Ireland. For my dead mother is Nancy Ann Hogan Welsh of Coolahalaga of Tipperary. And to know her is to sing the rocks of Bon and Billy in the low ground, and to recite the Lake Isle of Innisfree. Yet she wanted a businessman for a son, someone rich, she said, like the Kennedys. Oh, mother, I am beyond that now. My pitiful words like tin for a cobbler's hand, like leather cracked and dried in the desert, like a hidden monster flag saying United Irish League, with a wolfhound and harp, and nowhere new to go, but to the stars and turf, where we will meet again and dance and sing a lost or eternal tune, one perhaps in Irish or Gaelic, one hammered maybe or remembered in the morning dew. The old jail, Sisters of Mercy, Nina, County Tipperary, Ireland. To speak Irish is blackened stone now that turns to rusted skeleton keys for spinning round as if I could taste the rain that gets me here and see their empty ink bottles full with their golden nibs, remembering the why of it all, and the new but forgotten catechism that's remembered in this sanctity of another's place. The broken Hennessy bottle. Let obsessions with a teetotaler's fate remain stranded in the image or shining like diamonds and emeralds for a drinker's hand. But what of the drunkard or alcoholic? Perhaps the lifting and toss, the flying now through this paradise of air, the simple smash on an endless beach or priceless desert stones, with a thirst to come or a thirst finally no more. Hill. What could we own for the fighting's edge? Barley, a field, a chalice, the rusted scythes to take their heads? And we died there too after a sup, some said, or the elixir of taste to drive us on. And then a mishap or missed pronouncement or promise, the bones as fodder, our flesh as nourishment for a remembering ground. And this is my last poem tonight. Once again, thanks so much for inviting me here. And I want to wish everyone a great summer and good luck in all that you do. And I hope that you all stay safe and sane. This poem is called Black Bush. And Black Bush, of course, is an Irish whiskey. Black Bush. Gold is fire, is only gold now, and corked in etched glass. Some call crystal, or crystals call from the grave. This night, this eve, I know the scent of belief, and breathe in all smoothness to pour for all guests deserve the taste, the detriment of a people or a race. I believed and believer in the cure, the creature of what ails and sings a song to blackness, to the light like an eclipse of all that is both and of the same. O Lord, let me set it down again, for I love all that is and how its legacy, its charms endure. And raise my glass to my family and tell them I love. I am only you in your legacies, that and nothing more, nothing more. And America, I know, is only here and there, way past the flesh and bones. There, the place of souls, the crying for thirst, for the hunger. For this thirst and nothing more, for Black Bush is stilled and burning. Black Bush is a name repeating, a chant, an initiation past the grave, past the spirit into the reliquaries of nevermore, of always, evermore. Black Bush, Black Bush. I am now what I've always craved to be, what I've always fought to endure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Okay, thank you. Superb, Lawrence. Can we unmute and give a round of applause?
Fantastic work, Lawrence.
Thank you.
Sláinte, thank you.
Yeah, you got some Irish ones in the end. And yeah, Black Bush, yes. And you even had an eclipse reference at the end there. So, yeah, thank you, Lawrence. We'll be moving on to the open mic portion. Just mention that, again, that the next reading will be the last Tuesday of June, and that is June 29th, same time, and it will feature Gail Loridan and Heidi Seaborn. So,
Great. I'm going to stop recording now, if that's okay.
okay.
So, all right.